My name is Melorra Green. I live in San Francisco. I am a San Francisco-based artist, curator, and now co-executive director of the African American Art and Culture Complex. I also am co-founder of the People's Dispensary San Francisco. And I'm bringing that up because it's a revolutionary act to be in conversation around cannabis, art, and a space that serves youth. And we understand that we're taking a huge risk, but also a very necessary risk, inviting this conversation as an exhibition around cannabis, the healing properties, access to freedom of mental health, looking at the role that we can play as an anchor organization in our community, providing these services and resources to our people. A lot of people want to get off of synthetic medicines. A lot of people want to come out of hiding about cannabis use. And so we want to be a space to have that conversation safely with just us and even dispel some of the myths. So that's why the conversation is around smoke and mirrors and the deep dive work that the government has done to paint the war on drugs, the war on black people, the war on black bodies. And so we're here to right that shit.
My name is Nina Parks. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and my title and organization currently right now is the Original Equity Group, also known as the OEG. And prior to that, I helped co-found an organization called Supernova Women, and I also used to be a cannabis operator for a delivery service. Equity Sessions right now is a 6-week workshop series that helps equity applicants and other individuals trying to get into the cannabis business an education to navigate the new legislation, the new regulation, and as well as the new supply chain and how that works.
My name is Christine de la Rosa. I live in San Leandro, California. I am the CEO and national co-founder of the People's Dispensary. I feel like the war on drugs has affected everybody in all of our communities. So many of our men, black and brown, are incarcerated for minor cannabis offenses. Entire communities have been devastated, families, friends. I have people that I personally know that are in prison right now in the state of California where it's legal. So you have guys in ties making millions of dollars while black and brown people are still sitting in prison when their felonies should have been expunged on January 1st, 2018.
My name is Amber Center. I live in Hayward, California. I am the executive director and one of the co-founders of Supernova Women. I do this work to help my people. You know, I see other groups, white groups in particular, white men profiting off of cannabis, and black and brown people are still being locked up for it, and it's crazy. It's just not right. So I feel like I'm earning my keep on this planet by doing what I'm supposed to do, utilizing my talents to help folks in my community.
So what led me to this work, the African American Art and Culture Complex, was a commitment for supporting artists and finding a way to really make an income. Like most of us, I wanted to be in the arts world, and this was the best way to do it. So I spent 6 years here as a curator and gallery director. Now being back as co-executive director, you know, I feel like this is the next step for me and what I'm doing in my trajectory. As it relates to the People's Dispensary, you know, my sister and I have always had an interest in how we can, and I'll say this word so much, normalize cannabis, the use of marijuana, honoring the plant just like you would honor the power and magic of lavender and chamomile and basil and marshmallow and damiano, so many different herbs and plants that really heal our bodies and make you know, it possible for us to have a different quality of life, a better quality of life. And I watched my father you know, really suffer with cancer, who passed away in 2007. I look at my aunts who all take multiple medicines, my mom, multiple medications, synthetic medicines at that. And, you know, when you consider each medicine, each pill has a laundry list of side effects. And so the quality of life is just, it's really hard to witness. So when the opportunity came for us to partner with the People's Dispensary and be that entity in San Francisco, we jumped on it because the ethics of the company, the founding members of the company, the people who do the work, they're committed to equity. They're committed to people having a voice, committed to people finding your path in this industry.
So my name is Lanese Martin, born and raised in New York, first generation, roots from North Carolina, I'm real proud of that. But I've been out here in the Bay Area for about 15 years, and the last 8 or so have been in Oakland. I got here when Occupy was happening, so it was quite an interesting time to be young. I think equity recently has been used wrongly in the mass media or whatever when it comes to this whole cannabis conversation. I think when I think about equity, my first initial thought is I'm thinking about repair. I'm thinking about reinvestment from the harms done by the drug war. I mean, equity has been, co-opted to mean business licenses for Black folks. So basically, equity has been, twisted to mean Black capitalism. And I went to business school as did my co-founder, so we understand the role that Black capitalism can play, but we don't think it is the tool. We don't think it is the end-all, be-all. And so, to create a license opportunity to equity is wrong. So I think more about the word justice. I think justice includes repair and opportunity, opportunity to get licenses, but repair for the harms that were done, the destruction of the community that came with the drug war.
I would say the first thing is to acknowledge that the War on Drugs campaign was a racist platform, was a platform created of privilege. Acknowledging that will also allow us to really dissect what that plan was to put in place and to go back, like I said, go back to the people who were impacted by the War on Drugs and really have a conversation around what we can do. And I would say that San Francisco, through the equity sessions and the San Francisco Equity Group and others, the People's Dispensary as well, have really had some honest conversations. I really want to acknowledge Supervisor now, the Director of Board of Equalization, Malia Cohen. I want to acknowledge Cheryl Davis, who's the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission. I'd like to acknowledge Nina Parks and her constituents who really did the deep dive and long, hard hours. And I heard Zoe Polk played a role in that as well. My sister Brittany Chakuwatha, who created the policy, who you'll hear from as well. These women are the pioneers of the policy creation and legislation in San Francisco. And so I really want to acknowledge the work that they've done to really gather as many people who have been impacted to really understand the needs, what was lost, and what we can do right now to right the ship.
My name is Charleen Caabay, and I'm one of the co-founders of the People's Dispensary, and I'm based out in Oakland, California. I believe San Francisco and California, we need voices heard in the forefront, and the equitable plan that is, that they say. I think that, people like us, the People's Dispensary, if all businesses or if there's other committees that's pushing, the fight for having an equitable framework.
My name is Chaney Turner, Oakland, California native. I'm the national co-founder of the People's People's Dispensary? Well, what San Francisco and the state of California need to do in general is listen to the people who are advocating for this, right? The main people who are advocating for equity are women and women of color. So listen to those folks and include them. Currently, you have people who are making decisions that have no connection to the communities and no background or history in cannabis. Some of them have never even consumed cannabis. And so how can you make decisions when you don't even have a relationship with the plant or a relationship with the communities that are out here really working and advocating for the industry? So there needs to be more people appointed to these positions who have the lived experiences, and so people who are formerly incarcerated should have options to work within the industry as far as like decision making for some of the regulations that we have. Former people who have sold on the illicit market should be included. Again, people who have had the lived experience are the best people to help make the decisions for cannabis legalization.
I think the biggest thing that they can do is not trade equity off the table. I feel like people are so enthralled by the sales tax that they're just trying to get everything up and running so they can get the money. And because California has been in somewhat of trouble around money in their budgets, they're really trying to get that done. But what we're seeing, especially at the municipality level, is that they're starting to trade equity off the table so they can get the big corporates in who have lots of money. And I think that that's very short-sighted. So I think the thing that California can do right now, and that San Francisco can do really specifically, is to make sure that they're not trading off equity for a short-term fix. If you have an economy that's built by more than corporates, by small businesses, by black and brown people, your sales tax is actually going to be more. It's proven all over. Read any book, read any plan, 90% of tax base, especially here in Oakland, comes from small businesses. So if you write them off the table, you might have an influx of cash right now from the big corporates, but they're not going to be sustainable because eventually you'll be Amazon where you make $11 billion and pay no taxes.
Know that smoking weed on the street is still not legal. You can get a $100 citation, and we've seen what happens with tickets and the exponential growth of the size of the ticket over time, and so it creates these debtor prisons, so there is still that risk. And we also know that enforcement hasn't really changed. It's been deprioritized. However, we still know that biases exist. So just to be very aware that you still have to be careful. Like, you can't just be out there and blowing and chiefing and stuff, because like if you go wilding out too hard, they can be like, here's a $100 ticket, we'll see you in court, we'll see you doing community service. If you don't pay it now, it's $200. You know what I mean? So be mindful of that. Continuing to work, come to city meetings. Come to city meetings. Like, we have a lot of work to do on making sure that the process is efficient and affordable, and the only way that we can actually drive it home to our leadership is if we keep on coming to the table and voicing our concerns and our solutions, not just concerns.
Please share a call to action, especially as it relates to your company or organization.
Call to action. Show up, educate yourself, read the policies, know the law so that we can effectively strategize and move within it, because that's what got us messed up in the first place, right? Is that we didn't know our rights, or the framework kept on changing and our rights kept on changing, right? So we have to stay with it, keep our eye on the ball and participate. Don't expect other people to solve the issue for you. We can only do so much on the front line. We need fresh energy, so come out, learn, be present. I really hope that weed gets fun again. I definitely know that we have a lot of culture that can build in San Francisco around the experience as well. as like being able to help support artistry, because like, come on, art and weed go hand in hand. So I'm really hoping that we see a resurgence of fun cannabis events and art.
Get involved. Show up, show out, be there, be your own advocate. Yeah, that's my call to action.
And then we're going to be working on in Oakland, across the bridge, is working on really trying to figure out where the tax revenues go. You understand you've studied budgets in general for any municipality. You understand that police forces, law enforcement are ending up with like anywhere from like 40 to 60% plus of cities' budgets, and so it just seems wrong that cannabis tax revenues, given considering the war on drugs, would fall suit into also going into the general fund. So we have to ask ourselves, how are we spending the cannabis tax revenues? What are okay expenses and what are just simply solid no's? And so I would say call it actions, making sure that cannabis tax revenues aren't going to law enforcement to recriminalize Black communities. Making sure that cannabis tax revenues are going directly to communities harmed by the drug war, to ensure that they're getting access to the job training that would be able to advance them in a cannabis career. Or even, again, in the city, we have a lot of displacement issues. There's some anti-displacement measures that you can put in, having you use cannabis tax revenues to bridge the gap between folks being pushed out and helping folks stay, remembering that the government wants to use the war on drugs to steal people's homes.
Well, we felt it was really important to empower artists. Artists are the storytellers in every aspect of time. Even before writing, we could tell what happened in a space and time by looking at the art. And so we're looking at archivists here. We're looking at people who understand what it means to tell the truth about what happened in this time. So I think about Brother Emory Douglas, who created art to really tell the truth. I think about Brother Malik Seneferu, who said, this is what the crack era looked like. So when you talk about the war on drugs, and to have this work just really show what it's about, to show what it's like pain. We don't want to step over that. When you look at what Brother Emory Douglas did here, when you look at the truth that Brother Dalama created here, war on drugs is war on Black people. Inviting and having the opportunity to engage and invite artists to tell this story on their terms means that the truth will be told. So I think about Joanne Ludwig, who is going to create art about the spiritual aspects of cannabis. And we have Sister Rachel Wolf here who will talk about how cannabis is really just an herb and a plant. So her mural will reflect a traditional garden. This is what we used to do. I think about Sister Karen Seneferu and Brother Kufu, who is highlighting Dr. Sebi and looking at Dr. Carver. People who understood the power of agriculture, which is what cannabis is, like really acknowledging the power of agriculture. You'll also see infographics where we took beautiful art and information to bring out the important information to talk about cannabinoids and the endocrine system, really creating culture and talking about how, cannabis can come together to impact the palate. Terpene profiles, again, how you can train your nose just like you train your nose with wine. There's Brother Safety First right here who said, Black folks are 3 times as likely to be arrested for cannabis possession. Of the 8.2 million, cannabis arrests between 2001 and 2010. 88% were for simply having cannabis. Now, if you can control the narrative, then you can say that a plant is illegal and you can say that you shouldn't have it just because you say so. And you get to change people's lives forever. So I look at, how this sister here, her story is about how cannabis really provided access to health when she was battling cancer and how she had to really move forward beyond that. How this Brother Kaya talks about the spiritual aspects, using the orishas, when you talk about cannabis. There's a whole different culture around cannabis that we haven't had an opportunity to discuss and tell. I think about Sister Aima, who's going to create a beautiful dream catcher that shows us the power of sacred geometry and how cannabis is life. You know, there's so many words for cannabis. There's so many ways that we can serve as activists. And so this is our activism, creating an exhibition called Smoke and Mirrors, the War on Drugs. We invite you to be with us April 18th here at the African American Art and Culture Complex, illuminating the power and magic of this plant and creating a movement. Peace.